Hey, thank you for joining me again for another episode of Beyond the Table. This particular episode is going to be a little different because I kind of want to do a teaching. It's a teaching that's come out of some books I've been reading, a lot of thought. And so I won't give all of it, but probably enough for you to have conversation about once you leave from hearing or watching, listening to this podcast. And hey, by the way, if you're enjoying these, share it, like it, subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And hopefully we're adding some value to some of the conversations and value to your leadership as well, because that's what I want to do. And so, but today in this episode, I want to talk about the differences between being nice versus kind. Nice versus kind. You may say, well, there is no difference, where I would tell you there's quite a bit of difference. And we're going to talk about that. Here's what I've discovered, and here's what I know. No matter who you are, you have to have courage to be relational. Every relationship requires a measure of courage. To greet the guy who's walking down the street, just to say hello, requires a measure of courage. You may not think that because you're so friendly and outgoing and warm, but for others, it would be a great stretch to say hello to a complete stranger. Nonetheless, it is a requirement needed to have courage to be relational. To be in a marriage requires another level of courage. To be in a lasting friendship, you got it. It takes courage. And so there's a biblical principle, a biblical truth when it comes to leadership that simply says this: if you want to be great in God's kingdom, or if you just want to be great, you have to be willing to be the servant of all. And so you have to answer the question first and foremost, do I really want to be great? Oftentimes when we read that verse, we want to focus on being the servant of all, but you got to answer, do I really want to be great? And I think most people desire to be great until they begin to experience what greatness costs, because greatness isn't cheap. Greatness has a pretty big price tag to it. There's a cost to and for greatness. Success and greatness comes with a weight, and that weight is different than the weight that failure brings. And we talk about the weight of failure or the growth of failure or learning through failure, but do we ever really consider or look at the weight of success? I've said this for years and years and years. People will forgive you for anything except success. Once you start reaching a measure of success, you open yourself to a whole new world of criticism. And sometimes that's from those that are closest to you. And I think winning at life takes courage. And I also think winning at life is a great outcome, but it's not a great purpose. And let me just elaborate on that for just a second. Our purpose is who we are and who we're becoming. Our purpose is not a list of achievements. I think purpose is really more about who you are becoming as a person, as an individual, as a boss, an employee, a student, a leader. Who you're becoming is huge. It's not just a list of achievements, and too often we look at great or we look at winning. We want to look at achievements, and I want to reframe that, if I'm able to really look at purpose and winning and greatness from the arena of being bigger on the inside than you are on the outside. Really about who you are and who you're becoming. Because when the weight of success and the weight of winning comes up on you, if you've not grown bigger on the inside, it will crush you. I promise you, nobody, people don't believe you, but I'm just telling you, you've got to be willing to win at the long game. Don't compromise the long-term wins for short-term wins. You've got to have them both, but you want a life of purpose. You want a great lasting relationships. It takes strength. It takes courage. It takes intentionality to be committed to the long game. You want a life-giving, healthy work culture to function in, to flow in, where people reach their full potential. Where, yeah, we're competitive, but it's not about comparing ourselves so much with others, but rather being the best version of yourself. Where achievement, initiative, and creativity are really celebrated instead of looked down upon. And so I'm going to go ahead and assume, if the question was asked, if you want to be great, be the servant of all, I'm going to go ahead and make the assumption, if you're watching this podcast that, or listening to it driving down the road, that you've already answered the question. And the answer is yes. Yes, I desire to be great. Then what we have to figure out is, what does it mean to be the servant of all, or the servant of others, or what is known nowadays as servant-based leadership, which is really interesting, where that entire idea comes from. And so now, everything I've just stated isn't easy. It's not something that is just easily seized. So I'm not going to cover it all today. I'm just going to cover a portion of it and a bite of it. And it's the difference between being nice and being kind. Several years ago, I read a book someone told me to read. It was called Candor. Yeah, it was a good book. Had some great principles out of it. It was good. And they kind of leaned into this a little bit, but not really at the nuances that I want to. I was in a conversation several years ago with a friend of mine, and they live up in the Northeast. And so we were just talking about culture. We were talking about experience, background, that in the South, there's a different culture than it is in the North. We have different phraseologies. We have different expressions. And we have different colloquialisms. And so we were discussing really the difference between the North and the South, and really Texas, as well as other states, have their own uniqueness within their own culture as well. And she made the statement, and I kind of just shook my head in agreement, but hadn't really processed through the entirety of what it meant. But she said this. She said, in the South, you guys would rather be nice than kind. You guys would rather be nice than kind. And I'm just like, yeah. But I really didn't know what she was talking about. But I didn't forget it either. It struck something in me to say, let's go research, let's go study, let's figure this out. And I mean, for goodness sakes, we have country songs that are about being kind and humble and things of that nature. So I began pondering, because it was really an echo of what I was hearing in other circles that I was involved in. Another pastor friend of mine had said that on their team, they had implemented this policy called the honesty policy, where they get down to the last 10%. And inquiring more from him, I found out that they are honest to the last 10% of the conversation. And so in the South, we would say things like this: "Oh, bless their heart." Now, that can mean so much. It can mean that you're about to gossip about somebody, or it means that they don't meet some kind of expectation that you may have, or it sometimes, "Oh, bless their heart," is just a covering for everything. But it's really a way to be nice and not necessarily kind. And so it would be like this, and this is a very rudimentary example, but I'll use it anyway. If you have a friend who may have a piece of lettuce in their teeth, okay, Well, you don't let that friend walk around with food in their teeth. You tell them. Why? Because you're kind. It's not being nice, it's being kind. I don't want my friend to walk over and smile and have lettuce in their teeth. If someone's rude and you're friends with them and you care about them and you have a relationship with them, we tell them, we say, hey, that was rude. And why? Because you can be honest with them. That is an expression of, honestly, kindness. And so what is nice versus kind? And can you do both? We often think it's either or instead of both and. I honestly think it should be both and. We should be nice, but we should also be kind. Not nice at the expense of kindness, not kindness at the expense of niceness, but both. And so a simple Google search kind of gave me these definitions. Nice implies being polite, civilized, etiquette, and high-level social skills. Dictionary.com defines it as pleasing, agreeable, delightful. In the South, we would call this just good manners, and they have good manners. Kind, however, is about behavior. Behavior that is thoughtful, caring, considerate. It is also strong, confident, and, believe it or not, self-caring. When you're kind to somebody else, it's really an expression that you care for you. Like one of the aspects of self-caring is the awareness or the understanding of when I don't live up to the best version of myself, I'm really disappointing myself and everyone and everything around me because I'm not living to the best version of me. I'm not being kind to me. And it's hard to be kind to others if you're not being kind to yourself. I think nice can be described, I read this somewhere, that nice can be described as soft. And when I'm being nice, it's really, sometimes it's more about me than it is the other person. When I'm being kind, it is always about the other person. Where kind is being nice, but it's telling and it's showing the last 10%. So when I say nice is soft, here's what I'm talking about for just a second. When we're soft, we don't believe in the greatness of other people. So we're not kind to them. We don't challenge them. We don't tell them because we really and truly don't believe in their greatness, in their capacity to be great. See, when we talk about serving others, if you want to be the greatest of all, you got to be the servant of all. Serving others is really helping someone achieve their maximum capacity that they desire to achieve. We don't believe in their resilience. Are they resilient? You know, we love the movie where, you know, the actor says, you can't handle the truth. And truth doesn't have to be shouted out that way. But when we're soft, what we're saying is they're not resilient enough for me to be honest. They're not resilient enough for me to be kind enough to tell them these are your limitations, or this is what I'm seeing, or this is what I'm experiencing, or this is the, you know, the vibe you're putting off or putting out. It also means that when we're being soft, we do not believe that they have a desire to grow and be great. See, I think everyone desires to grow. I think everyone desires to be great. And when I'm being kind to someone, and maybe I'm challenging them, and I'm trying to encourage them, what I really believe is in their growth. I believe in their greatness. But when I'm just being nice and let them stay in in the situation they're in, or in the attitude they're in, or in the way they come across to others. I just let them stay in that. It's like, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. The reality is, I honestly have already decided they do have no desire to grow, or they have no desire to be great. And so what I've done is, and what I've discovered is, when I avoid speaking into someone's life, I'm choosing for them a limitation maybe they have not chosen yet for themselves, because I'm more concerned I may hurt their feelings than really help them. All right, let me give you an example. Every time a guest gets up and speaks on our staff, our team, and they get up and they speak, they do a presentation, they share, I'll have a debrief with them. We'll have a conversation. And I'm very nice in what I say, but I'm also kind enough to give them feedback that the next time will make them better. Why? Because we're in the communication business. We're in the people business first and foremost, but we're in the communication business. So to have better communication, there's got to be this honesty and this kindness where I would go in and say, hey, because you were so nervous, you were speaking so fast, we missed your point. Or be careful with pitch inflections, because sometimes you hit a pitch and you just stay there and it becomes white noise. Other times I'll say, you need to work in more intentional pauses in your presentation. Give space to think. You know, when you read the Bible, you'll read a word periodically. It says, you see this in the Psalms a lot. You'll see a word Selah, S-E-L-A-H, Selah. That word Selah means to think about it, to ponder it. If I was conducting an orchestra, the word Selah would mean to hold out a note so that it can be clearly heard. And so whenever you're communicating, you want to create intentional pauses and stops and tone inflections and facial expressions so that the audience stays engaged. So every time someone speaks on our team afterwards, we kind of have that conversation. I have them do that with me. Sometimes they'll just say, man, you just look so intense today. I'm like, well, I didn't mean to. I remember the first time I ever videoed myself. It's so scary. I got through. I thought I did good, and I'm watching the video. It was like really VHS in, tape, put it in, play, VCR, whole 9 yards. And I'm watching it, and I'm midway through, and I just pause it. And I look at my wife, and I said, am I always this angry when I speak? She goes, oh, you're not angry, you're passionate. And I'm like, that's not passion. I look mad. And from that day forward, I changed the way I speak. I changed my facial expressions throughout the presentation. Why? Because I wanted to grow. I had some limitations. And because people were being nice to me and said, oh, you're doing awesome. Oh, you're being passionate. They weren't kind to me. They weren't saying, hey, these are going to limit you in the future. And so because I didn't choose these limitations, others were choosing them for me, I had to personally break them for myself. We have people on our team that I promise you have guys on your team, guys you work with, that they're one or two adjustments away from being a superstar, a rock star on your team. But are you kind enough to tell them? You have the candor to tell them. Now, that's why I say I think oftentimes we'd rather be nice than kind. And when we want to be nice instead of kind, it makes us and our entire culture and our team soft. And it keeps me, and it keeps us, it keeps our team from the highest expression of ourselves. Now, I want to pause right here, because when you're in a growth environment and you're in a growth culture, and man, you're always wanting to grow, and that's at a base level who I am. When I communicate for growth, I communicate for change, I communicate for advancement. In some shape, form, or fashion. I want somebody to make a decision to do something different, even if it's small. That's my default. But if that is you, you have to be super careful that you don't become so critical that you don't celebrate the change, celebrate the growth. And so when I talk about we'd rather be nice than kind, I'm not saying that one is at the expense of the other. I'm saying you have to be both. It's not either or. It's got to be both and. You've got to be nice and kind. You got to be both. Because if it's always grow, always grow, always grow, man, it's going to wear everybody out. You know, there's a reason why in physical training, you don't do cardio every day. Why? Because you got to have time to recover. In a growth environment, in a growth a business, a growth expectation and culture, if you don't give people time to recover and to process and to implement the changes, I promise you, they're going to burn out, or they won't implement everything that they could have, because we're still pushing. So kindness at times is taking the foot off the gas pedal, and let's just run for a little bit. Hey, I hope you understand what I'm saying in that. So what if we assume everyone wants to be great? What if we assume that everyone wants to grow? Let's make an assumption that everyone desires to be phenomenal until they tell you different. Think about that. What if we just made the predetermination? I'm not going to put a limitation on them. I'm going to assume they want to be awesome. They want to grow. They want to expand until they tell me they don't, or until they prove to me over a lengthy period of time that they don't. There's a psalm that kind of goes like this in the book of Psalms. It says, you, speaking of God, not of us, speaking of God, David's writing this about God. He said, you will show yourself kind and merciful. Now hear that. God will show himself kind and merciful. All through Scripture, we begin to see this connection to kind and merciful. They're always linked together. That whenever God is being kind, there's always mercy. God will be kind because he'll tell you the truth. The Scripture will tell you the truth. It's like what Mark Twain said. He said, it's not the Scripture I don't understand that bothers me and causes me problems. It's the Scripture I do understand that bothers me and causes me problems. Now, I think that's true. That's true for me. It's not what I don't understand that bothers me. It's what I do understand that bothers me. But at the same time, God's merciful. And so we have to be kind to people and be honest, be truthful, but also be merciful. Interesting enough, the word kind, when used in Scripture, it also means to make one bright, polished, or chosen. So that tells me what my intention has to be. My intention through my kindness has got to be make the other person bright and beautiful. Make them polished. Make them know and feel valued and chosen. See, now kindness takes on a whole different meaning than candor. Because sometimes you can be candorous, you can show candor, but be curt. But if you're going to be kind, then it's about them shining brighter. It's about them feeling polished and better. It's them knowing, hey, I value you enough to let you know that I have chosen to do life with you. I've chosen the greatness in you. I've chosen the values in you. I've chosen to invest in you. So everything I'm going to tell you, I want you to understand. It's because I want you to grow. I want you to flourish. I see this potential in you. I love the word potential because it's a scientific term, first and foremost. We've turned it into so many other things, but it's really a scientific term. Potential simply means energy not yet in motion. Energy not yet in motion. And so when you say, man, that person has potential, that means you see something inside of them that if that energy was released into motion, it would be beautiful. It'd be needful. It would be of great value for your company, for the organization, for their family, for them. Sometimes kindness is what unlocks that potential that they may not even see themselves. See, I believe leaders are a miner, not of just talent, but of potential. I think you have to see potential in those that are around you and then speak to it, invest in it, voice to it, help pull it out. I find that to be absolutely challenging at times, but I find it to be the most rewarding and exhilarating when I see people step into their potential where they didn't think they could, but because somebody was kind and invested in them and was honest with them and shared with them, this is what I see you can become. This is what I know you can do. This is the creativity in you. This is the initiative you would need to take when you do that. Bam. Years ago, I was on staff at a church. I had a guy in my church. Man, brilliant. Oh, my word. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. He was nationally ranked in Bible quiz. He could quote the book of Acts, the book of James, the book of Luke. And when I say quote it, quote the whole thing. The whole thing. And he was sitting on the sidelines. He wasn't teaching. He wasn't leading. He wasn't sharing. And he had all this potential. He had the gift of teacher. Incredible teacher. And I went to him and I just said, hey, man, I need a teacher for a class. Would you consider teaching this class? And he gave me every excuse. Oh, I can't do that. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm not trying. I said, do me a favor. Try it for 3 weeks. Just 3 weeks. I think you can do it, and I think you would enjoy it. But listen, after 3 weeks, if you don't want to do it anymore, I'll let you out. He said, deal. After the 3rd week, he came to me. And he said, hey, Don, if it's all right, I'd like to take over that class. I'm having so much fun, and I'm learning, and I'm discovering what I didn't even know was inside of me. Thanks for challenging me. That challenge was an expression of kindness. Being nice would have caved into his excuses. Being kind pushed him beyond his excuses, but gave him a 3-week window because I'm going to be merciful for him to make a decision. And when he did, to this day, which is 30-something years later, he's still one of the greatest teachers I know and I've ever been around. Absolutely phenomenal. And so I want to encourage you, especially if you're in the South and you're watching this, be kind, be merciful, but also be nice. If you're in the north, add some niceness and mercy to your kindness. And I promise you, if we can marry these three together, we would see people begin to elevate, grow, reach potential and capacity that they didn't even know was possible. So here's what I want you to do. I had shared a while back in one of our podcasts that when you have a box of crayons, you need every crayon in there. And that one person doesn't have all the crayons in a box. And so people are coming to you with their gifts, their talents, their abilities, their experiences, their successes, their failures. And I want to encourage you over the next several months to show them kindness and help them explore to find their greatest potential and then watch it soar and unlock. I think it would be incredible. Hey, you may want to sit down with some friends, watch this together, maybe share it with your team and say, hey, how does this work with us? Could we be a team that is down to the last 10% for one another's value? Hey, I just want to say thank you for taking the time and joining me on this today, and take the conversation that has been had here and take it beyond the table. Have it with your team, maybe your family, and watch the potential of your organization explode because those around you unlock their potential. Hey, we'll see you next time at Beyond the Table.